Once we get to the third step, the fourth step easily follows. Again, let's say we're having a pleasant experience. I like pleasant experiences. I want pleasant experiences. Those flowers seem to be causing my pleasant experience. I want those flowers. So that's attachment. Or if I'm having an unpleasant experience, I don't like unpleasant experiences, I don't want them. Those flowers seem to be causing my unpleasant experience. Get them out of here. Aversion. Or if I'm having a neutral experience, that will simply reinforce my mistaken belief that those flowers exist independent of me, which of course is ignorance. But often here, instead of the word ignorance, you'll see the word confusion. But again, here the word confusion is not confused whether or not they're flowers, it's confused about how they exist. So in Buddhism, when you see the word confusion, it means ignorance. So it's same. So these, of course, are the three poisons, the three main core mental afflictions. All other mental afflictions come out of one of those or a combination of them. These are what is driving our behaviour, our actions. And every action we do, the Buddhist assertion is, based on a mental affliction, has a result, has a consequence. And the result of our actions is our various experiences, and our experiences collectively, the Buddha used the word dukkha to describe that, the first noble truth, which is often translated as suffering. So this is how our distorted view of reality leads to us being stuck in this state of dukkha. So this is the process. Any questions about that?
But still, if you let go of attachment and aversion, then you're not in suffering, right? I mean, if you manage to overcome...
But attachment comes from ignorance, and so until we get rid of ignorance, you won't be able to get rid of attachment fully. Now, of course, see, there's, for any mental affliction, we have two strategies, long-term and short-term. Short-term, we can do things to reduce attachment. Particularly if it's people, we can do the antidote of loving-kindness or impermanence and so forth. But the long-term strategy, to get rid of it 100%, we need to get rid of ignorance. So in the short term, we can work with these and reduce them, but if we really want to get rid of them altogether, the only way is to get rid of ignorance.
You have explained by negating.
Negating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emptiness is negation.
Okay. Don't you think if you negate that you're obliged to say what is in the affirmative?
Exactly. We said what was in the affirmative is dependent arising.
What?
That the affirmative is that things exist dependently.
No. What is my relationship to this flower? You have explained to me by negating.
Negating that you're not independent?
No, you explained to me that I'm wrong by thinking that there is something in there which causes me this and I'm suffering.
Right, so...
I'm asking, can you explain to me what does Buddhism say about my relationship to the flower? I'm mistaken. Okay, explain to me, where would I not be mistaken?
Okay. Is this big?
No, flowers.
Yeah, no, I'm using this to answer your question.
Big is small, I know, big is dependent what is small.
Right. So just like you can't have big and small, you can only exist codependent. Just like that, you can only have up with down, in with out.
Clear.
Just like that, you can only have me relative to not me. Subject, object.
Yes.
Me, world. So you can only have me relative to subject, object, together.
To flower.
To flower. That's the affirmative.
No, where is my attachment? You've explained.
If you understand that, there can be no attachment Because beauty is in the experience and not there.
Where is the beauty again?
In the experience. Beauty in the eye of the beholder.
So the beauty is in my eyes? The beauty of the flower? No, let's make it
But
concrete.
yeah, but when we say that, we don't mean we're just fabricating it. That's not what we're saying.
Okay, so what do we do say? Not
We're saying that the interaction of the two, the experience is, there's the experience of beauty. The interaction of the two.
But you realize that this is not explanation.
It is an explanation.
The interaction between this thing and me,
That experience we can label as beautiful. Because if we have a pleasant experience, we label it correctly as beautiful. No? So therefore, the beauty, like you said, actually exactly the same what you were saying before, there's no mountain there, it's language.
is language.
There's no beauty there, it's language.
So there is no, okay, and so how come do I have the pleasure from looking at this?
Because of causes and conditions, because of your physiological makeup, cultural conditioning, all of these things mean that when you in particular look here, you have a pleasant experience, whereas someone else looks here and goes, ooh. And that's all conditioning.
And you don't think you get to nihilism this way?
Nihilism.
Yeah. Because look
No.
what you have done. You have explained now, you have not evaporated, but took all the air from all concept of beauty.
No.
Pleasure.
Exactly. You said concept of beauty.
Look, it's concept.
Correct. So that's what all we're doing is we are understanding that beauty is a concept. Perfect. Correct.
Okay, so nothing exists in the world, not beauty.
No, nothing exists independent of our concepts.
Okay. So it's all of it is our concept.
We create these
We
concepts.
created concepts.
And the thing, that's the next presentation that I'm going to come up with, is, and this is where it gets, this view of emptiness gets challenging. And so if you just hold on, the next presentation will give you some more information.
No problem.
So where I understood the dialogue between
Sure.
you two. So where does my feeling of joy come without these flowers being here? I mean, if they don't
From your concept, it's easy.
So the question is your feeling of pleasure or...
Yes. I enjoy
What-
looking at them, right?
Right.
And it's
So
both of us
the
that-
key is that the cause or a condition for pleasure to arise?
it's the condition.
Right, so that's not the cause.
That's right. I agree.
Good.
But without
But you agree, but experientially that's not how we see it.
no. I see it. Let's say I see it experimentally. Now I'm
Then you would never have craving and attachment for anything pleasant.
why? Otherwise,
Because that's not the
I
cause.
understand. Let me ask, please. I understand that this is not the cause, but without it, I will not have the pleasure.
Convince you
Correct.
alone.
Correct.
So I will not have pleasure.
No, you will not have that pleasure. So remember two types of happiness, pleasure and genuine happiness. Genuine happiness does not require any stimulus.
Okay, I saw this with what we'll get to. So at the end, I'm staying only with my inner joy.
And plus, if some stimulus comes, something pleasant, you will enjoy it fully
Okay.
instead of with craving and attachment that we have now. So you'll have both. You'll have inner well-being plus maximum pleasure
Okay.
without the suffering.
He agrees.
So the pleasure I get out of being a biological creature who... The pleasure that I get without the attachment.
Pleasure with, when you mean when you use stimulus, when you have a certain
Yeah.
stimulus? Yeah, sure. Without attachment? Yeah.
Yeah, so the pleasure, the sensual pleasure,
Right.
it derived from me being a biological creature who...
Well, with sense faculties and you can pick up stimulus and so forth. Sure. If you couldn't pick up any stimulus, you would have no sensory pleasure, but you could have mental pleasure.
So the attachment is the just amplification of this...
No, the attachment is wrongly understanding that pleasure, and that attachment then interferes with that enjoyment. because it agitates the mind and we get frustrated. And so the attachment causes the pleasure to reduce. And often it causes it to turn into suffering through frustration, craving, and so forth.
I have a problem with this answer, but I'm not sure what it is. I need to think about it.
Okay.
But one other thing.
Sure.
So if I see the flowers and I want to have them, I'm feeling attached to them.
If you're feeling attached to them, yeah.
So if I'm enjoying something, I don't know, that is less tangible or less, or I don't know, like for example, I see a beautiful view of
Sure.
a mountain somewhere
Sure.
at the horizon,
Sure.
and I enjoy it.
Good.
I know I can't have it
Yeah.
because it's too abstract.
It's,
Too
you,
big.
yeah.
Does my attachment decrease?
Yeah, because you know you can't have it.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's why people like going out to the nature.
But also even the view, sometimes people, of course they also have attachment to that because they want it to stay like that. To stay like that. Yeah, and exactly, I really sort of find it really strange. It's something I used to do when I was travelling years ago. Of course, you know, you go somewhere beautiful, you try and line up the perfect shot, and of course you're not enjoying the view, and then later you don't really look at the pictures, and the pictures are not the view. And so all these people, like I see, putting so much time and effort, and of course if someone gets in the way, they get frustrated, get out of my way, I've got to take a nice photo here, and they're just not... And in the end, they didn't enjoy the view. They were just worried about getting the perfect shot. And then often they don't even look at the shot later. And then even if they do, it's not the same experience as the thing. So I sort of... I just don't take photos. I just enjoy the moment.
There's in a sense a different experience there with this kind of sensual pleasures that are less, yeah, like you said.
Exactly. So if you have less attachment, if you have less attachment, you'll enjoy it much more.
So it's naturally happening sometimes that you have less.
Yeah. And you'll find also with the Shamatha practice that if you really develop a more calm, clear, focused mind, you'll find that it's harder to get caught up in these reactions. So you'll find, and we know this from our own experience, when your mind is very calm and peaceful and you see something pleasant, you really like, you really enjoy. But if your mind is sort of like this and something pleasant, you sort of like, I've got to have that. And you don't really enjoy it.
What I keep coming back to is that things exist only in the interaction between them. If you say that it's true, like only when they have effect on each other, only in their interaction, only in their...
Yeah, I mean, we're jumping ahead in my presentation now, but this is going to come in the next session after lunch, the idea of the observer and so forth. So that's still sort of yet to come.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't understand where the inner happiness derives from.
The inner happiness arrives from getting rid of this. So if we get rid of this, we get rid of mental afflictions and suffering, and then the genuine happiness comes from being completely in harmony with the interdependent nature of reality.
You're in what do you say? It's like equanimity. Everything is the same.
No. There will be equanimity in terms of how you respond to things. You won't have craving and aversion, but it won't be like, oh, now everything's bland and boring. In fact, everything will become more beautiful. Everything.
I want to use the points that you said about the dependent arise, the
Sure.
three level.
Sure.
I mean, about myself, for
Sure.
yourself. So what we do is there's the basis, which is like a body and mind.
Yeah, this presentation is still to come, but go on.
And we have all sorts, and basically all sorts of input, right? Which is data, which is thoughts and mental images and memories, and we draw like the self on top of them, right?
Yeah, you label person on the body and the mind. Yeah.
Just a stream of.
Sure.
If we won't do this labeling,
Well, you have to do the labeling. So again, the problem is not labeling. We have to label. We have to. Otherwise, it's just we can't have any sense or meaning.
Chaos.
It's chaos. Exactly. It's like a newborn baby, as someone mentioned. You know, a newborn baby has very limited ability to do this. So, newborn baby, I think studies show that they don't even are not even really able to distinguish themselves from things that are not themselves. So they have to learn this. So if we don't, we can't function. And we are constantly improving our ability to draw lines, better concepts, more meaningful concepts. We have to do this. The better we can do it, the better. The problem is we don't realise that's what we're doing. The problem is we're turning lines into boundaries. We see the world is already divided up into many separate things. That's the problem. This is the problem. So if we can realise that there are no boundaries, everything is interdependent within the conceptual framework, then we'll develop boundless love and compassion for everyone. Because now it seems like there's, and we'll come to this, but brief answer, now it seems like there's an independent me here and an independent them there. And so, you know, if there's suffering here, oh yeah, that's important. Suffering there, well actually I don't care about that. But if we realise there's no boundary anywhere, then the boundless love and compassion. And that's one way we can understand if our emptiness practice is heading in the right direction. Is if it's heading in the right direction, you should notice an increase in love and compassion for others, and yourself, of course. If you're becoming more distant and more apathetic towards others, I suggest the emptiness practice is going horribly astray. Okay. So now, what I'd like to do if we have time later today is go back to this presentation and look at a short-term strategy. Because what we can understand from this is, if we want to overcome mental afflictions and suffering, the long-term strategy is we need to get rid of ignorance, the underlying cause. That we get rid of through this vipassana practice of emptiness. But while we're working on that, then it would be good to have some effective short-term strategy to try to reduce the impact of this process. So if we get some time this afternoon, we'll have a brief look at that. Actually, there's one other thing I want to look at here before we move on, is this mistaken dualistic appearance. We said that according to this view of emptiness, things do not exist as they appear. So this appearance is mistaken. The question might arise then is, well, if that's not how things exist, why do they appear to exist like that in the first place? And the answer is because of our ignorance. Every time we have ignorance, we reinforce the habit of ignorance. But there's another side effect of ignorance, which is often called latency of ignorance. Sometimes it means like stain of ignorance. And that, together with an object, is what's causing the mistaken dualistic appearance. So I use the analogy here that this stain of ignorance is like we're looking out on the world through the stain of ignorance, which means therefore everything appears to exist independent of us. So therefore, to overcome suffering, to achieve nirvana, we need to get rid of this. But these stains are very difficult to get rid of. And that's what we need to get rid of to move from nirvana to enlightenment. To get to nirvana, we need to get rid of this. But then still there's these stains in our mind. They're very difficult to get rid of. And getting rid of those, again through the emptiness practice, we can move from nirvana to enlightenment. So a lot more to be said there, but we'll sort of leave it at that. Right, next presentation. And I think I briefly mentioned this already the other day. We are stuck in what's called the two extremes. And the two extremes are existence and non-existence. Now we tend to be stuck here, in this extreme of existence. Meaning that we're stuck in grasping onto everything existing independently. Independent me, independent world. And of course, as we've seen from this chart, that being stuck there leads to attachment to pleasant things, aversion to unpleasant things, all the other mental afflictions and our suffering. When we start this Vipassana practice of emptiness and we investigate this me, this independent me that seems to be here, or we investigate the independent world that seems to be there, and we investigate, we'll come to see there is no independent me here or independent world there. However, for us now, there only seems to be two choices, two options. Either there is this solid independent me and independent world, or there's no me and no world. Because we've never seen any other type of me and world than the one that seems to exist independently. So when we start to undermine the independent me, independent world through our practice of emptiness, the most common thing that happens is we simply flip to the extreme of nihilism. Because what we do is we wrongly interpret an experience of emptiness as no me at all. Because we only see two possibilities, two options. Either there is an independent me, independent world, or there's no me and no world. So when we undermine that independent me through the emptiness practice, we misinterpret that experience as no me at all. And then usually we have some existential fear arising. Because again, we only see two possibilities, independent me or no me. And when we start to really, through our investigation, come to see there is no independent me, and so remember that not finding an independent me is an experience of emptiness. But again, the most common way of understanding that in practice is, oh, there's no me at all because I can't find the me. And then existential fear arises. Either I'm going out of existence or I don't exist at all. So a few ways to overcome that fear. Of course, the best is to understand not finding doesn't mean no me. Not finding means no findable independent me. So if we understand this view of emptiness better, then you'll find in meditation, if you get to the point of not finding, instead of fear arising, you'll have joy arising. Because you'll realise the me that I've identified with my entire life, the me that's caused me so much mental afflictions and suffering, simply does not exist. And we'll have joy. Actually, when you think about it, it's a bit crazy that the cause of all of our mental afflictions and suffering is something that does not exist. It never has existed, it can never exist. It's only because we believe it exists that we have mental afflictions and suffering. When you think about it, it seems very crazy. So therefore, if we can really reflect on our understanding of emptiness more, we can understand that not finding no findable me means no independent me, and emptiness is really the middle way. There's a third option. So not finding independent me means there is a dependent me. Because if there's fear arising, someone's having this experience. So the fact that fear arises proves you exist. You're not going out of existence. Because if you didn't exist, there could be no fear. So you're not going out of existence. The only thing going out of existence is a false sense of me, the root of all of our suffering. And then, of course, if fear arises, not to identify with it, then we can apply the Shamatha practice and just observe that fear as well. So therefore, to help us also to overcome this extreme of nihilism, of non-existence, we reflect on the flip side of emptiness, which of course is dependent arising. That there is a me, there is a person, and that person is depending on causes, conditions, parts, and labelling. The dependent me. Now, to find this middle way is not easy as a beginner. We tend to flip from one to the other. And I've even, sometimes I even hear people who supposedly have studied emptiness for some years and practiced it, and still I hear them say after many years things like, oh, it doesn't matter because everything's empty. That is completely the wrong understanding of emptiness. That is nihilism. The correct understanding is, because everything's empty, everything matters. That's the correct understanding. Emptiness means functioning world. Functioning world means emptiness. Two sides of a coin. If we can appreciate that, our view of emptiness is very good. And I have a sorry? Yeah. So what we tend to feel, and I hear people say this a lot who've even studied emptiness many years, I hear them saying, oh, it doesn't matter because everything's empty. That is completely the wrong understanding of emptiness. That's nihilism. The correct understanding is because things are empty, everything matters. Because emptiness means functioning world, means causality. Causality means emptiness. And so here, there's a nice quote from Nagarjuna from this text, his classic text on the middle way. He says, that which arises dependently and relatedly is explained as being empty. That which is empty is dependently designated. This is the middle way path. So this is the view of emptiness.
Where can we find it?
This is in his Nagarjuna's text called the Mula Madhyamika Karika, the fundamental wisdom of the middle way. There is, I think now, a couple of translations of that in English. It's like it's quite a big text, 27 chapters and maybe 400 or 500 verses or something. There was recently a translation came out I thought was quite good called what was the name?
There's also in Hebrew.
Sorry?
There's also in Hebrew.
Is it?
Oh,
I don't know. But the last translation, I don't know what they titled it, but it's from the, I think it's from the, is it from the Padmakara translation group maybe? But it came out a couple of years ago, this translation. Some of the earlier translations that I've read a little bit, I think the people who translated didn't really appreciate the philosophy very well. And so some of the translations, the earlier ones I've seen, are a little bit, I think, confusing and even sometimes actually wrong in how they translate it. But this one seems to be quite good.
How can I experience the self, the I, as if it exists really?
So the question is, how can I experience the I as it exists? Is that now we have constantly grasping. Now, and we'll actually I'll answer that by adding something I was going to